Back here at the KAIR AM studios with the Sports Ticket. Pat Strathman with you here on KAIR 1470 AM. Just got done talking with some of the high school wrestling coaches, but back here we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to focus on the Kansas City Chiefs. That's right, the Chiefs have a big matchup this weekend as they take on the Oakland Raiders. Yes, I have to drop that every once in a while, but they take on Oakland this Sunday. And it should be a very important game because since Denver Broncos lost on Thursday to San Diego, it's a pretty big deal for Kansas City to keep themselves alive and have a shot at having themselves home field advantage, and that could be huge for the Kansas City Chiefs. But joining me to break down Kansas City Chiefs, it's Farzin Vousoughian, the host of the Chiefs Zone podcast. Farzin, my man, how you doing, brother?
Hey, doing good, Pat. Thanks for having me on, and good time to be talking Chiefs. Finally got that win after it felt like a month, felt like forever since the Chiefs last won a football game. But now the Chiefs are getting back into rhythm, and as you mentioned, Denver drops a game Thursday night that no one saw coming. So just when you think that the number one seed is all locked up for Denver, unofficially, of course, all of a sudden it's back wide open, and three teams, New England, Kansas City, and Denver, all have a legitimate shot at getting that number one seed.
And it's going to be very interesting this week because Oakland's kind of one of those teams that you really don't know how to prepare for them for the most part. They're going to be missing probably Darren McFadden for this week. They'll have Rashad Jennings back, but there's still it's just a weird team Oakland is for this weekend. And is that the way you kind of feel about this game going into this weekend? Is it's just kind of a weird feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the typical Chiefs vibe that you get when you're getting ready to face the Raiders. Kind of a different week. I think at the same time, Kansas City is kind of at a higher tier and at a different level than the Raiders. So it definitely feels different this week around. Oakland, a couple of weeks ago, they still were in a chance where they could make the playoffs, but now they're, I think, mathematically eliminated. It's down to just a couple of teams for that sixth spot. But this isn't the typical Chiefs-Raiders game where you're used to seeing both these teams kind of have similar success in years past. They'd either be really bad at the same time or really good at the same time. But nonetheless, it is a Chiefs and Raiders game, and there are still a lot of people. By the time Sunday comes, everyone's going to be looking forward to it, and everyone's going to be pumped. Hopefully Kansas City can pull off another win. As you remember last year, the Chiefs did lose that game 15-0.
Yep.
All Sebastian Janikowski scoring in that game, so hopefully that's not the case this time.
No, you're exactly right. And Farzin, I think for the Chiefs, even though they have 3 losses, and 2 of them came to Denver, one of them was to San Diego, I think the Chiefs' offensive line this season, at the start of the year, everyone criticized them for the most part. The offensive line was not so great. They weren't that tough for Kansas City. They didn't have a lot of depth at that position. But I think recently, you've seen that the Chiefs' offensive line really play pretty decent.
Yeah, Brandon Albert's really the only longtime veteran on that line. Jeff Allen is a second-year guy. Rodney Hudson, he's a third-year guy, but he missed a majority of last year. John Asamoah, he's in his third year, if I'm not mistaken, kind of just getting his feet wet as a primary starter. And Eric Fisher, of course, the number 1 overall pick. But recently they've kind of had some injuries. Donald Stevenson's had to fill in, Jeff Schwartz. But those guys have done really well filling in when the Chiefs have dealt with some injuries with the offensive line in recent weeks. So Alex Smith has had better protection. And, you mentioned the offensive line getting better. If you haven't figured it out yet, the offense overall has been playing better.
Right.
Is there a correlation with the offensive line helping the offense overall? I think so. I agree with you. The offensive line has been playing a lot better, and that's translated into success for the offense overall. Alex Smith has been criticized so much this year for not playing at a high level while the Chiefs were 9-0. Now Alex Smith, despite the losses, he played some of his best football games the past couple of weeks. So Alex Smith has really gotten on a roll, and give credit to that offensive line because they've really stepped up. It probably came late.
Right.
It would have been better to see this maybe in week 3, week 4, but hey, better to be late than never, especially with the postseason just a couple of weeks away, and Kansas City's going to really need that offensive line to do well and translate this success into the postseason too.
Yeah, you're right on the money, Farzin. This is Farzin Vousoughian, the host of the Chiefs Zone podcast here on the Sports Ticket on KAIR 1470 AM. Pat Strathman here with Farzin. Now, speaking of Alex Smith, Farzin, I got asked this question the other day, and I think it's a really good question. Alex Smith, gotta get your opinion. Is he a playoff quarterback?
I think so. The thing with Alex Smith, he's had the craziest career out of anyone in the NFL right now. I don't know if you can tell me one guy who's had a roller coaster career out of any active NFL player right now. This guy goes to being the number 1 overall pick coming out of Utah to being just a disaster in San Francisco. And then he goes back, gets that starting job. And then he gets hurt, Colin Kaepernick takes over, and he stands from the sidelines and watches the team go play, the 49ers go play in the Super Bowl. Now he's back in Kansas City, and he's gotten this team on a roll. I think he is a playoff quarterback, absolutely. If you look at how he's done this year, he's done a really good job of taking care of the football. I think there might be 1 or 2 plays off the top of my head where I think he's made an unnecessary move where he couldn't keep the football and turned it over. But for the most part, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL that can really take care of the football. And that's huge in the NFL because a lot of football games are decided by turnovers, and Alex Smith has done a good job with that. No, he was not really the dominant guy when San Francisco made it to the NFC title game in 2011. And that, of course, is when Kyle Williams fumbled that punt return, and the Giants went on to win and eventually went on to win the Super Bowl. But I think he's definitely got those characteristics for a playoff quarterback. I guarantee you, if all of the quarterbacks had to become free agents, I think Alex Smith is one of those guys that would immediately be getting called. Definitely not at the level of Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, but I think he's one of those guys that would quickly be nabbed because people like his ability to protect the football, and that's something you need from a quarterback. Very few QBs do that in the NFL today.
Game manager, I think that's all he really needs to do for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Farzin, taking a look at the Oakland this weekend, Justin Houston has been officially marked off. Same thing with Brandon Albert, but also Dexter McCluster. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs will be playing without Justin Houston yet again, but Dexter McCluster might be a big piece that will be missing for this Sunday's game against Oakland. How big of a loss is really Dexter McCluster?
Yeah, I just heard about the news about his foot. Kind of a scary situation. But you mentioned Dexter McCluster. Kind of a similar story with Alex Smith. He's been criticized for not necessarily being that impact player, but this year's been his year. He's had 2 punt return touchdowns, and he's really been a big part of Kansas City's special teams. And I was thinking earlier this week. Look, Kansas City may not have the most consistent team right now. Their defense kind of fell apart, and their offense has kind of jumped up. But the special teams has been there. They've been really good. And without Dexter McCluster, can you rely on Niles Davis and Quentin Demps to also do well in the punt return game? Because they're great kick returners. They each have had a touchdown this year, recently actually, a kick return touchdown. But can they also do the same thing on punt returns? Punt returns and kick returns can be a little bit of a different dynamic, hence why can't they have different guys for all those positions? But I think it's definitely a noticeable loss. Let's put it that way. It's a noticeable loss, but hopefully guys like Dempsey and Davis, guys who have stepped up on special teams, can fill in. But offensively, I think it's also a big loss because Dwayne has not been that big impact player, and Dexter McCluster, he's been targeted quite a lot, 72 times. That's the 3rd most on the team behind Dwayne and Jamal Charles. Yeah. So he's one of Alex Smith's favorite guys on offense. So it's probably going to hurt the offense more than it would the special teams. We'll see how Alex Smith responds offensively because he's got to rely on guys like Donnie Avery and Sean McGrath, guys who haven't necessarily been reliable because of their drops, especially in the game against Denver. So I think it's more concerning for the offense than the defense. The special teams.
All right, Farzin, well, thanks a lot, man. It should be a really good game this Sunday between Oakland and Kansas City. The Chiefs trying to tie it up with the Denver Broncos. And if they get some losses on Sunday, they will officially have a playoff spot. But I think they want to focus more on beating the Oakland Raiders this Sunday. That game will be around 3:25 and should be a really good matchup. Farzin, my man, thanks a lot. Appreciate your time as always, man.
All right, thanks, Pat. Thanks for having me. You bet.
That's Farzin Vousoughian here on the Sports Ticket on KAIR 1470 AM, the host of the Chiefs Zone podcast. Always great chatting with Farzin about Chiefs football, and the Chiefs will take on the Raiders this Sunday. When I come back after this break, I'll preview the upcoming Benedictine College matchup. That's coming up next here on the Sports Ticket on KAIR 1470 AM.